Warning: this video contains 10 minutes of historical details regarding all that it actually took for guys like Reggie White to change NFL teams, which some might not like, but if you care to know such history and details, then enjoy.
Okay, so the NFL started in 1920, over the first 55 years up to 1974. Can you guess how many players changed teams without being traded? 34, and that was all after 1962, in the 43 years prior to 1962. No player had ever changed teams unless he had been told that he had been traded. And the league commissioner could unilaterally impose a cost to the new team after any free agent acquisition. Thus, many teams tried to avoid free agents. So with free agency starting in mid-March, here is a brief overview of the past 104 years regarding NFL free agency. When the NFL started back in 1920, owners created the reserve rule, which gave them the right to re-sign its players in perpetuity. This rule bound a player to one team indefinitely. Every player contract contained this clause, thus allowing owners to continually re-sign their players to another one-year contract with the same terms, so players could not move to another team by choice and had only three options: continually play for the same team, get traded, or retire. Then in 1947, the NFL replaced the reserve rule with the one-year option rule, where teams could instead use a reserve clause only one time after the expiration of a player's contract. This option year could no longer contain the reserve clause to give players an ability to negotiate and enter a contract with any team. Players became free agents, free to sign anywhere for the first time. However, it wasn't until 1962, 16 years later, when 49ers wide receiver R.C. Owens became the first player to ever change teams under this rule when he signed with the Baltimore Colts. But due to complaints from then 49ers team owner Vic Morabito about Owens' departure, NFL owners proposed a new reserve rule, which was negotiated and later accepted by the NFL Players Association via a collective bargaining agreement, where unless teams had agreed on a compensation prior to signing, this new rule allowed the commissioner the right to award compensation from a team signing a free agent to the team losing the free agent. Compensation could be in the form of players, draft choices, or cash considerations. And thus where the NFL initially created the annual awarding of compensatory picks. Initially, the rule gave the NFL commissioner all the power, and any decisions he made were considered final. Then in 1976, the NFLPA challenged the reserve rule in Mackey versus the NFL, and the court found that the rule violated Section 1 of the Sherman Act as an unreasonable restraint on trade. However, the NFLPA then sacrificed its free agency victory gains in Mackey versus the NFL for other employment benefits in the 1977 NFLCBA. The reserve rule was replaced by something very similar: a right of first refusal and a similar compensation structure for teams losing free agents. If you've made it this far, congratulations! And you are likely either someone who cares about the details, and hopefully you've learned something new, or perhaps you're an actual NFL player. Okay, so the Mackey case settlement led to a revised reserve rule and incorporated new forms of free agency restrictions in the 1977 collective bargaining agreement. A free agent's original team held the right of first refusal, enabling it to retain a player by matching any contract offer made by another team. The player's original team was also entitled to draft choice compensation from the team signing its player. But now there was an actual predefined structure based on a player's experience and his new salary, which determined the number and caliber of draft picks to be awarded. This system extended rights to teams who lost players, which had not existed previously. Up until 1982, NFL owners split all of the TV and gate money evenly among themselves. The players said this hurt their bargaining leverage and asked for 55% of the pie. The owners rejected the players' proposal and thus began a players' strike that would last 57 days. The longest strike in NFL history. The resulting 1980 CBA still included the owners' right of first refusal and draft pick compensation, but it adjusted the draft compensation to align with multiple tiers of salaries. 1987 marked the start of another NFL players' strike. According to NFLPA's website, it started after asking for better pay and more free agency rights, but the owners instead resorted to replacement players. The NFLPA picketed and blocked buses of replacement players from entering facilities, while some high-profile names elected to cross the picket line. Nearly 85% of the league's 1,585 players stayed true to the union and its cause. But the strike ended on October 15th, and the owners were declared the bigger winners as none of the players' demands were met. But the NFLPA asserts that the work stoppage created the momentum and determination necessary to endure the next 6 years without a CBA. In 1989, the union decertified, but several players filed lawsuits to become free agents and for a guaranteed percentage of future gross revenues in 1993, with an antitrust suit still pending and multiple offers proposed from each side. The owners unilaterally imposed a Plan B free agency with the absence of a labor agreement. This gave teams the right to protect 37 of its players when the league had 47-man rosters from becoming free agents. The 37 protected players under Plan B were subject to the same compensation rules if signed by another team. However, the remaining 10 unprotected players were not subject to right of first refusal or draft compensation rules. They were free to negotiate and sign with any team. However, players who were protected were essentially the team's best 37 players and were not given the same freedom and faced the same market restrictions as players before Plan B. Only one restricted player, linebacker Wilber Marshall, ever changed teams while the system was in effect. In September of 1992, U.S. District Court Judge David Doty awarded Eagles tight end Keith Jackson, Patriots defensive end Garen Veras, Browns wide receiver Webster Slaughter, and Lions running back DJ Dozer a temporary restraining order, allowing them to become unrestricted free agents for just 5 days, until an evidentiary hearing could be heard. Within this tight grace period, 3 of the 4 signed contracts with new teams, Jackson with the Dolphins, Slaughter with the Oilers, and Veras with the 49ers, and only DJ Dozer remained unsigned. And then a federal jury in Minnesota ruled that Plan B was illegal. Next, in 1993, during the collective bargaining between the league and the NFL Players Association, the owners granted players unrestricted free agency in exchange for a salary cap, which was first set at $34.6 million. Then another case, Reggie White versus the NFL, led to the White settlement, which allowed any NFL veteran with at least 5 years of experience to become an unrestricted free agent. But it also allowed owners to designate a franchise player and a transition player, which restricted their market. Players with 3 or 4 seasons of experience were subject to the same right of first refusal compensation system as before, and today known as restricted free agents, where teams have exclusive negotiating rights to players with less than 3 years of experience, now known as exclusive right free agents, but now set at less than 2 years. And now you know how NFL Hall of Fame players such as Reggie White left the Philadelphia Eagles and ended up at the smallest NFL city of Green Bay in 1993 and helped the Packers win a Super Bowl. In 1997, after the 1996-97 season,